Well, welcome to the Morgan City Council work meeting. It is March 26, 2024, and it's pretty close to 6, so pretty good time. So I'll excuse Gary. He'll be a little late. He's hoping he could be here before 7. And thought we had somebody coming. Yeah. Oh, hi, Dave.
Gentlemen and Denise, good evening.
Good to have you.
Feeling a little bit better, but still under the weather.
Well, don't go out in the weather for sure.
I won't even look outside.
Okay, well, we're excited to have a presentation from UAMPS, an annual update, and Mason Baker. So we'll be all ears.
Thank you. I'm going to stand if that's all right.
Yeah.
Sitting a good bit. With me, I've got Jackie Coombs. I think most of y'all know her. She manages all of our member relations amongst doing too many other activities to really list. So appreciate her very much. She's been extremely helpful for me throughout my time at UAMPS. I've been at UAMPS for almost 13 years. This May will be 13 years. I've been in the CEO position for a little more than a year. Prior to that, I was the general counsel for UAMPS. So recovering attorney. And the presentation that we've got planned for y'all, hope to have good dialogue, so please interrupt. Love to take questions as we go. As she's pulling it up, what we'll talk about are some trends that we're seeing within the wholesale electric market, how they're impacting the members, what we're doing to address some of those issues at the UAMPS level. So we'll get into that and talk about a little bit more about Morgan's resource portfolio. It looks like Ty had printed out. I won't get into a lot of detail about it, but I'll go ahead and reference it now so you can sort of understand what that eye chart is. It's a little, I think, looks a little difficult to read to me based on the size of it. We can probably figure out another format for that. But what that shows is by resource, the FY23 forecast. So this is more or less calendar year 2022, and then the first 4 months of 2023. That's the UAMPS fiscal year.
Can we ask a question at any time?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, I just circled a couple of things on this. I was interested. Obviously,
Yeah.
Obviously the pool is pretty interesting, how much the cost of the pool power went up, well, not went up, but based on our budget. But my question is, what's firm enchant?
So, yep, Enchant was going to be a power purchase agreement from a developer called Enchant, where they were going to take over the San Juan coal plant in New Mexico and convert it to a carbon capture coal plant. And then that fell through, and that was a big impact for a number of members because we put it in the forecast. It did not show up, and it was relatively low priced power. And then we were sort of in a scramble mode to then buy replacement power for the members. And that replacement power was much more costly than would have been forecasted. And part of the reason why we're going through this exercise is to identify recommendations more thoroughly on a member by member basis, but we want to also improve our forecasting that we're doing for the members. And so in this particular example of Enchant, we're going to be more cautious about when we're forecasting certain projects to come online. Because this same fiscal year, we also had 2 solar projects that were delayed that also impacted the members for the same reason. We forecasted it was also going to be pretty cheap power, and then we found ourselves having to replace it.
Okay, and then, so are we looking at the 2023 budget here? Is that what we're looking at?
That is what that is. And we're about to close out at the end of this week on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, fiscal year 24. And if you look on the far right in that gray quadrant on the far right-hand side, upper right-hand side, you can see the updated FY 24 forecast. So we've done some accounting for what's happened since we started the fiscal year. And then to the right, you can see FY 25, which will start on Monday. And for each of those resources, you can see what percentage of the Morgan City load each resource is forecasted to serve. So it's a good way to sort of quickly get a sensitivity as to what resources you have the most exposure to.
Does your fiscal year begin April 1?
It does, yeah. And there's some history there. The thinking at the time was that it would help the member cities that were on a July 1 fiscal year from a planning side. And now we have, we were talking to another member this morning and, they're on a calendar year. We have a handful that are on calendar year, majority are on the kind of traditional municipal year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, again, appreciate all of the questions. And I don't, should I be pointing this somewhere to make it? Okay, yeah, if you don't mind. I think most of y'all are pretty familiar with UAMPS, but just, we've been around now for about 44 years, and we were originally formed to get into the Hunter Coal Plant. Currently, we have 50 members in 7 Western states, 37 in Utah, 16 different projects. We're not for profit. We're a project-based joint action agency, so we allow our members to decide what resources make up their portfolio to serve their member community. We will be looking at a somewhat alternative structure to add a all requirements type feature, which would be similar to UNPA, where the planning and procurement of resources would be more or less the responsibility of UAMPS. That's something that we're going to explore because as we're dealing with some of these energy transition issues that we'll talk about, we're finding that some members have a lot going on within their distribution systems to where they really don't want to or have the time to spend on some of the power supply, the wholesale power supply issues. So it's an alternative form of membership. We anticipate continuing forward with the existing form, but just want to be adaptive to what's going to best serve the member needs. It's not predetermined that that's something that we ultimately do. I mean, it will be a member-driven decision, but it's something that we're going to explore over the course of the next year. On the right side of this slide, you can see in this 3-circle Venn diagram, these are the 3 core focus areas that we have as UAMPS. This is coming out of a strategic planning effort we did with the members in the fall of 2022. Okay. Oh, there it works. Yep. So just a little more on each of these quickly. Long-term planning, we're going to be doing more of that with the members. It's part of the exercise going through the forecast to actual for 23. As the industry is changing, we're seeing more a greater need to have more interaction with the members on how to do long-term planning to meet their community's power supply needs, because we're going away from a wholesale electric market in the West that we've gotten used to over the last 40 years that had a lot of coal capacity on it. That's starting to get retired. We'll have some more slides on that coming up. And it's becoming a more challenging environment. So we need to spend more time with the members doing planning to navigate this transition. What that means is a lot of additional focus on new resources. We have a number of new resource projects. The new resource projects that Morgan is participating in are also listed in the bottom right of that sheet, the eye chart sheet that we were referring to a moment ago. The other circle here is optimizing the existing resources. It is very challenging for us to bring on new utility scale generation projects. It's about a 5 to 7 year development timeline. And we're having and showing need for these new resources yesterday. And what we're realizing as part of that is we have to keep online the existing resources we have as long as possible to ride us through the period of time of getting new resources on. There's other value associated with keeping those older resources on because, the Hunter coal plant, for example, the debt is paid off. So provided we have coal there, which is a separate challenge that we've been experiencing over the last 18 months, it should be a very low-cost resource for the members. Nevo, our natural gas plant, outside right in Payson off of I-15, the debt on that will be paid off in 2026. We want to figure out how to keep that operating as long as possible as well. What you see here on the left pie chart is UAMPS on an aggregate level, all the resources that we use to serve the members' power supply needs in 2023. Some things to point out here. 25% came from hydro. This is mainly Colorado River Storage Project, Glen Canyon Dam, Flaming Gorge, and there's some other smaller hydros that are comprised of that. But that's a fair amount of sensitivity we have towards, whether it's a good water year or not. So that's something to sort of keep in mind. And a lot of the members have a fair amount of Colorado River Storage Project. Y'all are in Colorado River Storage Project. It's a consideration and something that we're mindful of. The unfortunate thing is that it seems like when the hydro generation is down, we typically have extremely hot summers that also drive up the wholesale electric market price. Some other things to point out, the coal piece of the pie there, 15%. If you went back to 2008, that would have been closer to about 30%. And what we're seeing in the industry, we're no different, is the fuel switch from coal to natural gas. That natural gas, 21%, and that's likely going to grow as we move forward. We'll get into it in this discussion. We're actively looking at doing new natural gas. Other thing to point out in the pie chart here, 30% came from purchases, and this was very challenging in 2023 because the wholesale electric market pricing was extremely high, and there was a lot of exposure to that. Moving forward, a big recommendation that we're making to the members is trying to shrink down that purchase portion of the pie for each member. And each member is different, right? Depending on what their resource portfolio looks like. So there's some other points to note quickly. That solar piece will continue to grow. By the end of May, we'll have 150 megawatts of utility scale solar on for the members. So that's, and you guys are in Steel 1B. All the projects in red on the right are projects that Morgan is in. Steel 1B is the one that should be on by the end of May. And that's just right outside of Plymouth by the Nucor facility. When you're driving up I-15 right now, you can see it. I don't know if y'all have been up there, but it's very close to the highway. I was sort of surprised how close it was. So yeah, those are the projects, again, on red that Morgan is in. All right. So some trends that we've seen in the wholesale electric market. This goes back 20 so years, back to 95. And you can see this is the power that we purchased for the members off the wholesale market. And we had the real difficult period around 2000, 2001. the, Western energy crisis. This was back when Enron was manipulating the market. So that pricing spiked then. And I'd say it's worth focusing on the period of time on the right side of the chart from, 2010 to 2020, because that period of time you can see the pricing is pretty soft. It's not that volatile. During this period of time, a lot of the members, and at the UAMPS level, we became very reliant and comfortable on that wholesale market pricing. And what's also happening in this period of time is we start seeing a lot of coal plants come offline in the West. We start retiring that capacity. And then we get into the 2020s, it starts to climb up. And then we have a really challenging spike in pricing the summer of 2022. We had a late kind of summer. If y'all remember, in September, there was a heat dome over the West. It drove up pricing, and that's the spikes that you're seeing. It was also a bad hydro year. So it was a combination of things. The other thing that we started having at the UAMPS level, coal scarcity with Hunter. We went down for an extended outage at our gas plant. The outage was planned for a month, and it lasted through January. For members that have been reliant on, say, 2 to 3 resources, that was a very, very challenging year to only have 2 or 3 resources. That's kind of why we're very big on resource diversity, and making that recommendation. The other thing to point out, during the last 14 years, the new generation that's been coming online while we've had coal capacity coming offline, it is vast majority, 80% or more, renewable generation. And that is typically low cost, but it doesn't necessarily meet all the needs that we have. So that's part of the challenge that we see moving forward. This graph just gives you kind of more of a monthly look on year by year cost, wholesale power costs we've bought for the members, kind of on the daily market. The blue line is that fiscal year 2023 that was challenging. The red maroon line is the 23 average, and you can see it sort of went back down. And we think back why that was. It was a mild summer, and you think back towards last winter, it was incredible snowpack here. So hydro generation was really humming along. We anticipate, there's going to be years like 2022. There's going to be years like 2023. There's going to be more volatility as we move forward because the system is changing. It's becoming more reliant on renewables. And that's really a major reason that's driving us to really roll up our sleeves and try to do more planning with the members to where we're navigating it, because we don't want to be in a situation where the power supply costs are creating continued rate impact shocks. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with rates, and we want to be mindful of that. You have to do capital improvements within the distribution system. We know that. We want to figure out everything we can do on our side of the equation to minimize the power supply cost. So talking a little bit more on the energy transition challenge, these are the 4 pillars of navigating this energy transition that really has been going on for, I'd say, the last 15 years, but we're just starting to feel the cost impacts of it. There's a focus on doing low to no carbon emitting resources. We've seen that through renewable generation being the predominant form of new capacity. When you look in our Western area, 80% of the new capacity that's planned to come online over the next 10 years is renewables. And we'll talk about it in a minute. I mean, we see ourselves doing a lot of renewables, but we also need to figure out how to do dispatchable capacity. And what that really means is probably natural gas to where we're able to balance the system when renewables are coming in and out of the system, depending on whether the sun is shining or the wind's blowing. That balancing the resources is going to be a challenge. Our grid reliability coordinator has expressed concerns about that. So it's not just us utilities that are concerned about it. The grid folks are concerned about it because, again, we're just having more and more renewable generation come on, and it's creating more sensitivity to the grid because you just have less control over those resources. Another aspect of the transition is dealing with transmission. We need to build more transmission, and the process to interconnect new resources takes 5 or greater years. And so that's a large issue. Do you have questions?
No, I'm just.
Okay, okay.
Well, I do, but I'll wait, so.
Okay. The last pillar up here is supply chain issues. We've all dealt with supply chain issues. We deal with it, whether it's transformers, the solar projects have all been delayed because of module deliveries. And we're talking about doing more generation domestically here over the next 15 years than we've done ever. It's a massive rebuild of the whole system, and it's going to take a while to kind of reshore, if you will, a lot of the domestic manufacturing that is currently overseas. And there's a big push for this. It's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be some speed bumps on this moving forward.
Maybe I'll go ahead and ask my
Yeah.
question now before I forget. On the low, no carbon resources, in the future, how important is battery technology as far as storage is concerned? I mean, could that be an answer to some of it, or?
Yep.
Particularly with solar?
Mm-hmm. The answer is absolutely. And that is reflected up here on the second point here. What I'll say quickly about this slide is this is from the integrated resource plan that we did, taking a look at all the members in the load and their loads in the aggregate. What are the best options for new resource development to serve the member needs? And on the battery one, I'll go to that one and then go back up to natural gas. So what it said, and the way all these recommendations came forward, it's based on least cost, least risk. And that's more or less how these were optimized, and these results came out of the IRP. And what it said was look at 300 megawatts of additional solar. So this is on top of the 150 that we've already procured. But when you do it, you should look at doing that with 150 megawatts of batteries. And that is, when it says up there, it says 150 megawatts of BES, which is, apologize for the acronym, that's Battery Energy System Storage. It's an engineer acronym, so blame them. But batteries can be very helpful. And the steel project that we're involved in, as part of sort of the restructuring because of those delays, we built in an option to where we can look at siting a battery there, because we're seeing more and more value in having that sort of ability to recharge the battery during that sort of the really kind of like the middle of the day. We don't need the power. I mean, there's an oversaturation of solar already in the system right now. When you think about, we've seen it in the pricing over the last month, where some of the pricing has gone negative because loads are down. There's been a lot of solar generation, and they don't want to curtail the solar generation.
But you just can't store it.
Well, you can store it with batteries, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So that's why, I mean, that was really why the recommendation came out this way. I mean, it was really sort of saying, don't really look at more just solar. You need to be looking at solar with batteries. And I think that especially as we think about it it's fair to say we're hearing that from a lot of the members too, where they're saying, I don't like it. It needs to be with batteries now. You know, the pricing is more expensive to put the batteries on it when you sort of levelize the cost for sure. But it seems to be a competitive option. Pricing wise, you kind of get up more maybe into natural gas pricing, but it's very dependent on natural gas pricing. The big driver is the fuel cost. Right now, natural gas pricing is incredibly cheap. A year ago, it was as expensive as it's frankly ever been. So there's a fair amount of volatility. I don't really have it as part of this conversation, but that's another thing that we've been spending a lot of time on is trying to really fine tune our gas hedging policies and working that through with the members. You know, how much gas do we want to buy forward? How much do we want to leave kind of unhedged, subject to index pricing? On the first point, a very clear takeaway is we need additional capacity that we can control, dispatchable capacity as we refer to it. And it said, look at doing a 300 megawatt combined cycle plant. That's the CCGT, and then 200 megawatts of peaking generation. And that peaking generation would be able to deal with some of the fluctuations in the renewable generation. And we're actively pursuing natural gas, and we'll discuss that a little bit more. Other takeaway that I already mentioned, it said, you know, you need to really hold on to your existing resources as long as possible. You know, it takes 5 to 7 years to bring on a new resource, but things can happen in construction. We need to have some overlap in resources to account for any sort of hiccups that we have in construction. It also said, you know, you should also be actively just locking in land for these new generation facilities. And that's something that we're working towards. Something to bring up is we have plenty of solar and battery developers and wind developers coming at us all day long, which is great. We don't have anyone coming to us and saying, hey, we got this great natural gas plant. So we'll be focusing on doing new natural gas and moving that development forward. We'll continue to look at renewables. That's probably going to be coming through, not through us owning it, but we're going to be contracting for it. It's just how it seems to be going. We've been looking at trying to own solar and batteries, but we have not seen it come together economically. I get into some of this, but it is what it is. So getting to some more Morgan specifics, this is really just a pie chart version of what is shown on the actuals from fiscal year 23. But I think it's worth looking at it from sort of this perspective. So the PX, that 48%, those are market transactions that y'all have done on a forward basis. So these aren't daily spot transactions. And I say it that way because when you do it on the forward basis, then you have an understanding of what the costs are as opposed to having sort of the daily pricing volatility and just kind of taking that after the fact pricing. And this PX piece is very significant. The majority of this PX transaction will come off right before the summer of 2027. So that'll be something that we're working with Ty and the team on trying to figure out how to move forward from that 2027 transaction onward. Because as I mentioned, you know, the new significant generation that we'll be bringing online won't be on by 2027, right? So that's something that we'll work through. The pool exposure, 18%. And, you know, that was challenging in 2023 because of the pricing volatility. IPP as a callback option, you know, moving forward, that's something we're going to work with the members on because we think that can be a very strategic asset to call back, but we need to get better a better understanding of what that's going to cost once it fully transitions to a natural gas plant. It's just changing, right? It's pretty easy to sort of understand the economics when it was a baseload coal plant. It's just different. Overall, you can see when you shift over to the right side of the pie, excuse me, purchases, 65%. So that's going to be, a combination of what was the PX and the pool on the left. And I know those numbers don't quite add up. So I'm not sure what the resources sold, I think is the missing 2% I have. No, Sunnyside wouldn't have been on yet. It's close, yeah. But I think that the key takeaway is, there's a fair amount of exposure to the wholesale market, even though some of it was very much hedged financially by locking in, not daily. And, we talked to Ty about that, and y'all are participating in a lot of the new resource investigations that we're doing. Again, the idea is to sort of diversify the exposure. We're not saying to have no exposure to the market. We just want to figure out how to moderate that exposure. Yep. Yeah, Clark?
On
Oh,
that-
of course.
On the Hunter approach, the recent legislature bills that passed, Home Jack kind of sponsored those.
Mhm.
How does that tie in with Hunter? I mean, is there a chance that money could go totally public power? Or will it remain just part of a contract that
Mhm.
that we have access to?
Wow, that's a good question. I can, I don't want to over speculate,
Yeah.
but I'd say some things that are worth acknowledging. I think the public power co-owners right now, and that is us, UMPA, and DG&T in that project, have a better relationship than we have in a really long time. And I think that's a real advantage for us moving forward with the other co-owner there, Rocky Mountain. I think my sense is, and their revised integrated resource plan should be coming out next week, so I'm speculating. My assumption is they're gonna push back the retirement dates that they had identified last year around this time for Hunter and Huntington. They were talking about retiring the facilities in 2032. That was not a public power retirement date, so that caused some issues. I also know that they have now moved forward with securing a long-term coal supply agreement, which is good news for us. I think that they sort of have taken a step back and realized the value of those assets, which I think is good. The other thing about the 2032 date, that's really no time in our industry, and they weren't ready to really transition anything. And I say that they weren't ready, and I don't think they'd really done much for the community there to deal with that transition. So that's something to, yeah. So shifting a bit towards some of the projects that are coming online and that we're studying in our firm project, this is really where the power purchase agreements are set for the renewable projects that we're pursuing. So y'all have a 50 kW entitlement in steel, and it's supposed to come on right before Memorial Day. And we're actively watching that, and we'll look at doing batteries there again. So more to come on that. On Fremont, this is another project that we're studying. This project seems to be moving forward very well. We anticipate having the power purchase agreement negotiated with the developer by the end of this month. And then from our process, then we'll have that come out to the membership. So this will likely come your way in the May, June timeframe. If that negotiation stays on track, it seems to be in good shape currently. A nice thing about this project, Rocky Mountain was going to take it, and then they suspended all of their new resource procurement last summer, which was a great thing for us because there were a lot of these development projects where all of a sudden they thought that they had contracts, and we were able to do some picking and choosing, and this is one that we chose. It comes online in 2026, for the summer of 2026. And all the other projects that we're looking at from a power purchase agreement standpoint are later than that. So that's good for the members. This will be solar and batteries, 100 megawatts and 50 megawatts of storage, as you see up here. Says it's just west of Paragon, but I think it's kind of more north, but I don't know. It's pretty much right there. It's kind of right by that. Jackie's gonna make fun of me. You can see it right from that the mile marker. Can I tell him? I was explaining to her that the exits are lined up with the mile markers. We've been having a good time. It's real close to the rest stop that's right there. You guys know what I'm talking about. Okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, y'all are participating in 200 kW on this one. More to come on this one. This should be coming back to y'all shortly. Geothermal. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on in geothermal. A big reason why is all of the horizontal drilling techniques from fracking, they're coming over to geothermal. So it's opening up new fields for exploration. They're just much better at drilling. And a big part of doing geothermal development is doing drilling to sort of understand what it looks like and exploratory drilling. And these guys, it's frankly a bunch of oil and gas folks, and they understand drilling and they're really good at it. And I expect to see more of this. We'll likely be taking the approach of power purchase agreements from an operation and maintenance standpoint. It's a very caustic environment. All these tubes that you're looking at, a lot of them get replaced every 3 to 5 years. So that's sort of an interesting operational and maintenance concern. So it's sort of, and on top of it, you got to do exploratory drilling. It's just a pretty different development, construction, operation, risk exposure than I think that we need to be taking on. But lots of opportunities. We're currently looking at 2 different projects in Nevada. There's a lot of exploratory work going on around the Beaver area right now that we're tracking. Natural gas generation. We're talking to so many members about doing internal behind the meter generation, something that y'all are looking at doing. Because we see that as being very valuable, especially when we start thinking about how to deal with some of the pricing volatility when your loads are high. That's been a huge benefit for many of our members. But kind of getting back up to the UAMPS level, we'll be looking at narrowing down, and we've been going through a siting study right now, looking at site locations. The team was out last week looking for 3 days at sites all over Utah and Idaho. We want to narrow down to 2 site locations and pursue those and go through the transmission interconnection process for those. We've been looking at different technologies, combined cycle, and also looking at more of the peaking generation. Any of the technologies that we'll look at will have the ability to have the ability to fire on natural gas or a blend of natural gas, hydrogen, or ammonia. And we just think it's prudent to do that. At some point, we're going to have CO2 emission restrictions. We'll have a final EPA rule out that we'll have to navigate on new natural gas generation, likely in April. Probably no later than the end of April, because otherwise they can run up, if there's an administration change, they can run up into easier legal challenges if they get it out later than that. Not legal challenges, the Congress can overturn the regulation under the Congressional Review Act. Anyway, so that's coming up. It's a little more on the siting considerations. We're constrained, as we all know, dealing with air quality issues along the Wasatch Front. So that's pushing this siting investigation kind of outside of the Wasatch Front, which I also think is sort of a good thing. I mean, that's also pushed us kind of into some of our member communities, which is great. Water availability, we'll likely look at doing dry cooling because of water scarcity issues. And it's frankly astounding seeing how much water costs have gone up in Utah over the last 5 years. It's been kind of eye-opening. So I think there's a pretty good business case for doing the additional, more expensive capital investment up front. And you'll have a 1.1270% entitlement. So that would just give you the option to participate at that level, not the requirement for any of the new facilities. I mentioned this a little bit already. I mean, it's great that y'all have that FY23 budget to actual dashboard. It's an example of new things that we're trying to do with the members to better serve y'all. We want to be doing more of this. This is, the first time we've done an exercise quite like this on a member by member basis. We think it's valuable because when we look at things on a budget to actual basis, we'll do that every year as we close out the year, right? At the UAMPS level. But when we do it that way, it doesn't really get down to, okay, how did this year really impact the member? And that's really what matters. So as staff, we've been challenging ourselves to figure out how to, really make it more meaningful and more actionable for the members moving forward. We talked about the All Requirements Project. That's an exploration that's getting kicked off, more to come on that. The last one on here we haven't talked about is the financial health checks. And what we're gonna do for each of the member is look at the key financial metrics that a credit rating agency would look at as part of any sort of financing. If you guys were going out and doing a bond, if UAMPS is going out and doing a bond, say for a new natural gas project, our credit rating will be the aggregate of the members. So we want to look at it too and see, okay, what can we be doing proactively when we go out and do a financing so we have the members in good financial health. As we've been talking to the members, I think many of the members see value in seeing how, from a benchmarking perspective, how they compare to other UAMPS members of a similar size. And so they can sort of see what's going on within their systems. And there's going to be differences, right? The age of the distribution system is going to matter. How long they've been around and what resources they were able to participate in makes a huge difference. So there's going to have to be some considerations when we go through it, but we anticipate having these out by the summer in advance of our annual member conference, which I guess I can plug now for Jackie. That will be in Midway this summer. And I think with that, I believe that's the last slide. So I really appreciate the time and happy to take any questions that y'all have.
Mason, I have a question, or I'd maybe just ask if you would comment briefly concerning the Utah legislature and IPP, in particular the bill that the governor just signed.
So I think that is I'll just be, just very candid about it. I don't think it to be a very productive piece of legislation. I have real concerns about the air permitting scheme. I don't see how that works. I don't think it is likely that someone will acquire an 1,800 megawatt coal unit. It'd be a different story if it was a 400 megawatt unit. That's not what it is. I don't think it's good. I mean, SB 161 really didn't get into some of it kind of does actually get into some of the governance issues. Because if they don't do certain things, then there's sort of a penalty there. I don't think that's good. I think that we need to figure out a better way as public power to make sure that we don't ever find ourselves in this type of situation again. And that's something that we had someone from IPA this morning at one of our other meetings comment on, and I fully agree with her that we need to do better messaging on that. Need to figure out, probably re-strategize a bit. I don't know why this has been a repeated issue for the last 3 years. I don't see it productive. There's been a lot of calories I know that IPA's put into it. We've put a lot of calories into it, trying to support them. And, if you look at it from a pure results standpoint, we didn't get to the desired outcome that we wanted. So we need to figure out what didn't work in that strategy. I mean, I hope that's helpful and not vague. I'm happy to have any follow-up on that.
Yeah, so
We have so much going on. I'll just say one thing. We have so much going on as an industry. We can't be wasting time on unproductive matters.
the governor, signed the bill, but then he said, "Oh, there's parts of it that need to be revisited." Will there be any help from that?
Well, that is good to hear. I honestly did not know that he had said that. That was my hope that he would say that.
Mhm.
And I thought that there was a reasonable probability that he would say that because, I mean, going back to the air permitting thing, I, was a lawyer, heavy Clean Air Act attorney, and that stuff in that bill, there are problems with that. Need to spend time sorting that out. So that's good. I mean, I think we got to get all back to the table and have a real dialogue. And that's kind of the unfortunate thing I've seen in this is we need to have a better dialogue amongst all the stakeholders. I think, everyone has some ownership in that, governor, legislature, us as utilities. I think we communicated better on it 10 years ago. There's some things that happened in the last 10 years. But, we need to move past it.
Thank you.
I have just a comment and then a quick question. Appreciate this. I was just gonna say, I appreciate this. This is pretty informative. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this before, but it is nice to kind of have something to look at and compare with. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
For doing that. The other question I had was, you mentioned a minute ago, you said that Rocky Mountain backed out of some of these projects, canceled. I guess this has nothing to do with neither here nor there, but so why would they do that? What's their game plan?
Well, they've had some issues. Some of the issues that they've had, they've got a lot of wildfire litigation liability, and that came up in the legislative session. Part of the Rocky Mountain legislation that got passed was giving them essentially a wildfire fund. I think there's, they're taking a step back and looking at, they were if you go back and look a year ago, they were walking away from fossil generation. And I think that they've had some experiences since then that are causing them to revisit that. They went in for something like a 27% rate increase in Wyoming. And that wasn't a good experience. I think they're taking a step back. I think they're realizing they need to hold on to some of these assets longer, right? I think it's a good thing for us. I do care about what's going on with Rocky Mountain Power because as part of having a good dialogue as a state, they need to be part of that. And, that's something that's gonna we'll see how that sorts out. They've got issues, we all have issues from time to time, and they've got some, yeah. Well, again, I really appreciate the time being with y'all. And we're always happy to make any inquiries. Please let us know.
I'd like to thank Mason also for coming, so we have to come from the director that go out each for the before the meeting, we got shown a little bit of our system, but their understanding of where we're at is hugely, it's way beneficial, because I look at this on a monthly basis, I go portfolio and stuff like that.
I thought I just clicked it.
Well, and
What was I? Anyway, just like to thank you Amp for all their efforts, and the dialogue between members is getting better too about what are we gonna do. Even distributed energy where we buy and sell from each other with their internal generation and stuff like that is sorting itself out. So the pool project and things like that are getting fixed. So as an organization, I think it's headed in a really good direction.
thanks for that, Ty. One thing, since we were talking about some of the IPA legislative issues, and you reminded me of it when you were talking about when we were driving around town. We as sort of public power, and Morgan's no different. We have a really good story to tell. And that's something I think the legislature doesn't have the right level of understanding of currently. If they did, I don't think that we'd be having this conversation that we had a few minutes ago. And that's something that we'll be working on more, and just something to be thinking about, because I really enjoy coming out and visiting, because, I've come into Morgan, but I, hadn't been down through the old historic strip, and, seeing the substations and all these things really matter. I want our staff to get out here more in the membership. That's a separate thing that we'll be pushing for, but as, elected officials, something to think about, because, elected officials to elected officials sometimes goes better than hearing from some utility guy, some utility lobbyist, So again, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mason. Any more comments? Let's adjourn and take just a couple minute break.
No. Small tree tonight. What you done? Tripped yourself up? Oh. My wife went through that.
She went through that. One side they did cut the dang stuff off and then. Ash, and get in there. So when she bends down. There's something just comes out. He said, I said, "Well, I didn't, what's his deal?" He said, "Have to go come in and open it back up and cut it off." Two big slices. But to put that mesh in, get one cut, right? Leave one too long, that makes no sense.
How long?
Probably been early fall. Yeah, early last fall. So
Mine was last Wednesday.
Yeah.
So if you see me have to stand up in the back, oh wait, where it was.
I thought you'd hurt your back.
Huh?
I thought you'd hurt your back.
Now it's. Yeah, she's.
Passing the night.
Yeah. Effectively, or I pay her. She takes me,
Yeah.
Appreciate it coming up. Oh, yeah.
Well, we saved in all your trouble.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. One star.
The purple is dark, blue is milk, yellow is caramel. Yeah? Need a little, coming up here?
Need to pick me up. You okay? You see me get up over here. You gotta slow down.
Thought we were gonna have.
Better get a new picture of my grandkids. They're only 16 and 14 now, so.
I know, they grow up in a hurry, man.
Should we bring that lounge?
Lance,
Yeah.
how are you, buddy?
You know, it's not bad. Get up. I'll stand up.
You want to like.
Okay, yeah.
Or you want to go around this?
So if you can see me standing here taking notes, don't be shocked.
Okay.
Lopsided. I can't stand very long and I can't sit very long.
Yeah.
Not very good at those abbreviation things, but IPSA, Intermountain. So.
I don't know why they just can't spell them out.
Mountain Power Superintendents Association.
Close, huh?
Yeah.
I've already been busted up. I've already got it.
That's
what Clark was the chair of. For, so we're keep those, but we got some safety awards.
So are you accepting all of these?
Yep. Chance to get a picture with the name.
Oh, trust me, the newspaper calls me for pictures.
What's that?
The newspaper gives me a call tomorrow for pictures.
Second.
Used to have a visitor from the paper once in a while.
Happens again.
Haven't seen that much.
The Davis Journal too, sent to me. It's kind of interesting, you read that article about.
What is it,
the
staff?
boys volleyball team. Started in Oregon.
Oh, I
Yes, we have a boys volleyball team.
They were gonna try and get one going.
And they went play bountiful, and bountiful, and yeah, it was pretty good. Sounds like.
Pledge? Oh, yeah. Pledge?
No.
Who is
He's having a hard time sitting with this.
Oh, okay. So you need a,
It's a weird name.
You need a prayer?
Good.
They were doing okay. His son is 6'8" and his mom is a senior.
That's quite a picture right there, isn't it?
6'8", it's pretty tall boy.
I would run that nuts. There's no way. that you could hang off me like that.
Oh, no, that's fast to get that.
Oh,
Yeah.
They'll get under there and they know exactly. How do you even see it, let alone, you know?
Yeah, and that's they coming down and jumping up and something.
If you remember this.
I like watching Sam.
Right, it doesn't pertain to you.
That-
Oh,
That is my.
It's just waiting for you.
Talking about the boys volleyball team at Morgan Nest. Found-
The names?
Yes. And he's not here yet, so we'll just wait and see if he
Okay.
shows up.
You have an answer for him, but.
And. Oh, he's coming.
Say we're up and live. Save there.
There, he's just not on video.
You can hear us, Dave?
He's on.
Loud and clear, Steve.
Hey, thank you. All right, welcome to our Morgan City Council meeting. March 26, 2024. Appreciate everybody being here and in between whatever the weather decides to do. I've asked Jeffrey you're sitting down.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeffrey might need to stand a little bit, so if he stands up, it's just. He said, yeah. Appreciate you being here and all that pain you're in. And then we'll ask Tony if he'd give us a prayer. Jeffrey?
Everybody, please rise. Please pledge allegiance after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, as we convene our city council meeting this evening, we wish to take this opportunity which we have to express our thanks and gratitude unto thee for our many blessings. We're grateful, Father, for this beautiful valley in which we live and for the many blessings that thou hast bestowed upon us here. We're grateful, Father, for the moisture that we received this winter, for the opportunity it brings us of having the water needs that we need this coming year. And we're thankful for the moisture. We're thankful, Father, for the opportunity which we have to serve this community. And Father, we ask that thou might bless us this night as we make decisions concerning our community, that we might have thy spirit to be with us, to guide and direct us, so we might always act in accordance to thy will, and that we might do those things which are for the good and benefit of our community that we serve. We're grateful, Father, for those who have preserved our freedoms and our liberties, for those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our liberties and freedoms. And we ask that thou might bless those who are currently doing so as they served in many capacities, the armed forces and first responders, and those who are watching out over our safety and security. We ask that thou might bless and protect them at all times. We're thankful again, Father, for all of the blessings that we have for this beautiful, peaceful valley in which we live. And we humbly ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Do we have an approval of the meeting's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, Denise, we have item C taken care of. How about the consent agenda, the minutes of the city council work meeting on the 12th, the council meeting on the 12th, and the warrants from 038 to 0322. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I don't believe we have a copy of the minutes yet, right? So all we would need to be approving would be of the warrants.
Warrants, okay.
And I did have a question, just one question on warrants. Just curious, I guess. Who is West Coast Code Consultants? Boy, say that fast. Yeah, tight.
So
Well,
that's who does our building inspection. So it's called WC3.
okay,
That's what most people know them as. So they act as our building official and plan review. So Roe does all of our residential four-ways inspections, but anything commercial or plan review is done by
this West Coast.
West
Code.
Coast.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Mayor,
Got a motion?
if there's no other question concerning the warrants, I will make a motion that we approve of the warrants dated from March 8th, 2024 to March 22nd, 2024.
I'll second that, Mayor. I'll second.
Okay, we got 2 seconds. That's great.
Hey.
Third.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Denise, that was unanimous. I don't see any citizen comments. I don't see any online. Okay. Let's move down then to item 4. IPSA, now you just told me that, but let me read it. I'll cheat. Intermountain Power Superintendents Association. Okay. We have some pretty good recognitions and awards here. I believe, Clark, you're here to do the honors to accept these.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna have, if Ty will just take a minute to kind of explain like he did to me what, this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, so this is the organization that Clark served as the chair or president, president of the chairman, something like that for last handful of years, but it's a certifying body for becoming a journeyman lineman and meters and all the, anyway, the apprenticeship program that they go through. So it's really a good organization and they've recognized us for safety, which I attribute to Clark and our guys, but it really does take some leadership. So these 3 awards are all safety related.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, I'm gonna move down and
go get some
hand these
pictures.
to you.
Oh, okay.
Get out of the photo bomb.
So yeah, we need to like get some photo wall or something. Back by the flag would be a great place. Yeah. Yeah, the eagle and the flag, I think would make a great backdrop here.
How about a speech, Clark?
He's gonna give us a
Well,
little bit.
maybe we can give you just a little bit of background on these.
Grab a mic. Grab a mic. Here, Clark.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the Intermountain Power Superintendent Association is the group that encourages the training and the safety of pretty much all of our apprentices and journeymen. And it covers pretty much the same group that's in the UAMPS, that Mason was talking about. But it also covers any of the REAs, so the rural electrics are part of it too. And we're just one of the closest ones in this area that offer the training and offer the pathway for your new apprentices to follow along and become the journeyman. Basically, it's similar to all your other apprentice programs where it's 8,000 hours basically. And as they pass through this program, we recognize them as they go along, but these actual, the safety ones are ones that are tabulated throughout the entire group that's involved in IPSA. And they have a yearly one, and the big one there is for 5 years. So the guys have done really good. They've done what they're supposed to do, and we haven't had any lost time accidents in five consecutive years. Yes, exactly.
And they've been up in all kinds of weather.
There you go. Yes.
It is, it's
Yeah.
way impressive. So can you just get my arms and his body?
We just do.
Oh, just a minute, we're having a mad.
We're moving.
Tony, he was up and asked. Can we do it here or? so I
Oh, you
can-
move to the center. There you go.
Get to the center.
Why everybody's so camera shy?
Exactly.
We're all just recorders done with live. so
Exactly.
So I'd like to hold that one up.
Yes, we do a handshake. Right.
Right.
You gotta look at me though, Clark.
And that's, you know, that considering that's incredible. Incredible. We used to say that we've gone all these years without a vehicle falling off the hoist on somebody. Cause it only would take one bad thing. So that's,
Yeah.
and sometimes you get to where you get used to the procedure and you might
Exactly.
think you do everything, but
Yeah, so you get a little complacent.
yeah.
Dangerous, generally it's dangerous for our young guys and us old guys.
Well,
You know, that's where you get your troubles, yeah.
to me, it shows good leadership.
Well, thank
Somebody
you, but the guys.
keeps it going. And this is from the IPSA to present you, Clark, for the many hours of dedicated service as the chairman of the IPSA organization from March of 2018 to March of 2022.
Oh, there you go.
We appreciate you splitting your duties.
Oh, thank you. We didn't design this and give ourselves an award. It's just, it's the way the program works, so. What I do appreciate is the fact that, I supported us and you guys support us in doing this, because it takes quite a bit of time. You've gone quite a bit, and then you got whatever meetings you gotta go to, and can't do it without good support, so thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's kind of all of us working together, but I appreciate that you don't take things for granted and you take it serious every time you get up in the air.
May I just make one comment, Mayor?
Yes.
Coming from an industry that looked at LTAs, or LTIs, whichever you want to call it, almost daily, it was, you know, it was a metric that was looked at again, very seriously, where my occupation was 5 years without an LTA is very impressive. That is to be commended. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That is just not pie in the sky. That's quite an accomplishment. So tough to do. So kudos to you and your team and your guys. So
Well, they've done a great job of using, I mean, you know, support again. We've got the equipment that you can be safe. And then it's also a culture.
it is a culture.
More so than it used to be. It used to be get the job done and get it done now. Now it's like do what you gotta do to get it done safely. And so that's helped. That's helped a ton.
You know, you're absolutely right. When I look back on my career up there, I think of what we used to do 40 years ago when I started up at the cement plant, and I cringe when I think about it now. And safety is not something that happens overnight. You're absolutely right. It becomes a culture. It just becomes a way that you do things without even sometimes thinking about it. But it takes some time. But again, I'm impressed with that. So congratulations.
Thank you again.
And are you available for autographs after the?
Hey. In the active agenda, I'm gonna switch C to B and B to C. That makes sense? So we'll start with item A. Adoption of Morgan City's cross-connection control policy, resolution 2411. So Ty?
Yeah, so, Kale's here to answer any questions, but we, currently do not have a cross-connection policy. No, so, as far as I understand, right?
No.
Right, okay.
It just popped in my head. Went over all our binder and that. I ran up to the base right away and said, we have policies.
That was a bit of an overlook in the last
Yeah, well, it
50
has,
years, so.
has been, till now, so I just really appreciate, Kel,
Yeah,
catching that, and then the ordinance comes from, DEQ, right from the state. So we're just kind of adopting what they outlined for us, and then if you have any, questions, Mayor, if it's okay, just to direct them to Kel.
okay.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Dave.
So the policy talks about permit number Utah 15008. Is that what allows us to use water, that permit?
That's our permit number.
Okay,
That's our distribution permit number.
okay. Maybe the next one would be a question for even Gary. Gary, why wouldn't this be done as a code versus a policy?
So there's also a code section that we're working on amending. It'll be brought to you next time. But our ordinance actually is very much in line with what Kale has recommended and what the state has recommended. And so we've gone through and we've done kind of a go through. Ours is a little more thorough. We actually have a penalty section and some other things that the state code doesn't have, because we have also a secondary system in the city. But we've gone through, Kale has, and I've reviewed it, and so we'll be ready to bring that to you next time. It is an actual ordinance, but you're also required by state law to have a policy in place.
Okay,
So, and actually by our ordinance, it requires a policy as well. So this will fulfill that requirement.
okay. Item 1B talks about a board member over the Morgan City Water Distribution System. Who is that?
I had a question on that too. I just barely, when I sat down and I got thinking, do we need to have that in as the city manager or the manager over the wastewater system? Like,
It can be.
is there a better way to word that? So it's not one of you guys have to decide if it's a penalty or not, or do we leave it as a board?
When we say board member, that would give an indication that there's multiple members on the board, and
Yeah.
one singled out as a board member over the distribution system.
So we could probably change that to just individual over the
Water superintendent?
water superintendent.
Okay,
It's also referenced in number 2 on that also, not just.
yeah, that,
But 2 also.
yeah, there's a couple of references to it, but
Yep.
that brings us to number 2, which any person found in violation shall be subject to reprimand or other appropriate disciplinary action as determined by the board member. Again, Gary, that seems awfully vague. You've ruined the water system, don't do it again. Or
So,
ruin the water system, you get to go to jail.
so out of the two, the more restrictive applies. Between the ordinance and the policy.
Policy, so the policy will have a little more teeth to it.
The ordinance has more teeth to it.
I mean, the ordinance, yeah, I had it
It
backwards. So-
definitely does. You can actually go to jail under the ordinance for.
Okay,
What is
Well, then-
the council and
maybe that number 2 doesn't need to be in there, do you think? Because it talks about it being subject to disciplinary action, period. I mean, what is that?
Did you reference the ordinance in there that will pass?
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe reference the ordinance instead.
yeah, we could make a change to reference the ordinance. That would be fine.
Okay, yeah, because it's pretty vague, and
Sure, yeah.
yeah, it didn't really say what the consequences were. And then I guess part two, it said the copy of the policy shall be placed in a binder. I mean, is that something that you do, Kale?
Yeah, it's it has all of our, it's just my records binder, so I keep them for 5 years. And it just has everybody that has a backflow device and their annual inspection form in it.
Okay, so and make sure you get the policy in there, I suppose. That's what it says you'll do.
Yep,
That's all I had. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, I had the same question on B as well. No. Yeah. The one where it said, oh yeah, okay, number 2, the reprimand, other appropriate disciplinary action. So Gary, in the ordinance, could it actually list some sort of a financial fine or something, a punitive damage? This came up, by the way, Kale, a lot when the secondary water system came online, because we were worried at that point big time about cross connections, people wanting to hook up, you know. So, and I'm surprised we never did anything with it then, but I'm curious, is there, can it just mention specific fines when we get into the ordinance? Because somebody just mentioned it a moment ago, this could be extremely costly if somebody cross-connected and.
So I was just looking it up just to tell you what the fines are, but they're significant. So let's see here. Yeah, the penalties are, it's hereby declared any person who creates or attempts to create a backflow of contaminated substance. So there's a fine that can be assessed that should be part of our consolidated fee schedule. Or in the case of no fine being assessed under our fee schedule, they're guilty of, or they can be found guilty of a misdemeanor, which is up to, I think it's up to $2,000 and 6 months in jail is what it is for a Class B misdemeanor. And so that's in section 8.08.050, the penalty section of your code. And so we could, when we update the consolidated fee schedule, put the size of a fine. And I think there is, I'm pretty sure there is. Backflow device. I'd have to look. But so all 3 ways, we can stop them civilly, we can stop them criminally, and we can shut their water off in addition to that. So there's kind of 3 ways that you can do that.
Yeah, that could get pretty expensive. If you did contaminate.
So Cal, is this on an individual basis, a residence, so to speak?
Yeah.
That
So
the older homes that don't have this, is there any of those here still?
There's none that I know of. Whether there are some or not that have them on there that aren't getting tested, I guarantee you there's some out there. Like Ridley's had one out front that we've never had one on. That I'm just waiting for them to turn their water on so we can actually get someone over there to test it. And Ridley's was installed wrong when they put it in, which they redid it last year, and I went over and made them raise it up. Cause that's the other thing too, if they're reduced pressure and if they're installed below the heads, they don't work. So when the heads pop up, if they're not 12 inches above, they won't work properly.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. Also on number 4, it talks about the black backflow prevention assemblies. There's a number of those, Kel.
Yeah.
Do we have certain ones in there? And then it references required by the policy. Do we have certain ones that you prefer, that we'd prefer to have on the system? Because I know there's a whole handful of ones that,
Well,
I mean, all the way from,
your RPCs are the best ones.
do we, I guess my question is, do we need to reference it in our policy? Because I
Well,
could go to
it's-
Home Depot and buy a backflow preventer
On
for
your,
$20 and
yeah. And you go up to A, it references isn't that where it, yeah, in the International Plumbing Code, it references what's approved for what situation.
Okay,
And it's stated in both the policy and in the ordinance.
okay, I just wanted
So
to
it's
make,
not spelled out in there, but it is got the reference on there for the chapters that it's got them on. And then like the binder I have too, I've got all that printed in front. So if I go to do an assessment at Bingham's, I
Yeah.
can look and they're a high health risk, so
yeah,
it's gotta be the best one they have.
okay, I was just wanted to make sure we're just being thorough with that because again, I could go to Home Depot and buy a $20 one and yeah, hey, I got a backflow preventer. Yep, you know.
So in the code itself,
Yes,
it actually is very, very specific as to what size. It says it has to be approved by any backflow assembly required herein shall be the make, model, size approved by the city. The term approved backflow prevention assembly shall mean any assembly that has been manufactured in full conformance with the standards established by the AWA. And then it lists those assemblies that are qualified. AWA, whatever, and then there's about 2 of them that are listed. And they must meet completely the laboratory and field performance specifications as found in the cross-connection control and hydraulic research of the University of Southern California, established in it. It gives you all kinds of specifications. So it's pretty thorough. You know, the code section is pretty thorough. The other piece, Tony, to your question, there's a provision that specifically provides that all cleanup, all replacement, all pipe,
disinfecting the
everything,
system.
disinfecting and everything is to be charged to the individual who caused the damage.
Okay,
So,
I was curious
yeah,
about that. So,
That's the last,
like I said, we worried a lot about that when we brought the secondary water system online, because we thought, is there gonna be somebody out there that's gonna try and,
Well, and there's people that do it, they don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah,
I've ran into that in Farmington. We had the whole cul-de-sac was complaining of dirty water. And we kept flushing it, kept coming, kid was getting sick. And I just finally said, have you seen anybody digging in the yard last year? And they said, yeah, that home right there.
yeah,
Went over there and sure enough, that's what it was.
yep.
Mm.
And the guy didn't even know he did it. He was a doctor. He was like, oh, I was just doing it myself, figured rather than pay somebody else.
Yeah,
And he felt horrible.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Did he feel that way about it, his wallet?
He was a doctor.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, so I think sometimes it's just innocent. They're just innocent.
they
in
don't
it,
know any
but
better.
Yeah.
It's really an education thing.
So we owe you a thank you for putting your nose into your affairs and, yeah, I think that's important to have that, thoroughly looked at. But my question is to you is how would you find out there's like a situation before a situation? You just can't really.
No, and
Unless you went and visually.
we do have to go around and like, I gotta go down around and do individual hazard assessments of all the businesses and that and see what's what. And that's gonna be fun because I can't find really any records of who has them and who doesn't.
Okay.
When everybody has E. coli, you know there's a problem.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean-
It'd be nice. to know that. It'd be nice.
before I started doing those assessments, that's when I started looking and thinking, where's my authority statement or my policy to give to people when they say, what gives you the right to come in and check my facility?
Want to take a deputy with you?
We don't need to go that far. I hope not.
That'd be a
So
bad
that-
day.
This will kind of give you that.
Yeah,
Protect.
Won't calm the anger, but it'll.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any more questions or comments?
Mayor, I'd make a motion.
Water superintendent?
Water superintendent.
I think that's what.
that makes sense. Is that okay?
There's several places.
And then we're removing section 2 and just referring to the ordinance. reference to the ordinance as to the penalties and cleanup that is required.
So would number 2 be, any person found in violation of this policy shall be subject to reprimand or other appropriate disciplinary actions as determined by,
As
By-
provided
or determined by.
Yeah.
the ordinance in Title 8.
So leave it
Very-
in and reference the ordinance.
You'd insert that in number 2, the reference to the ordinance.
Okay,
That sound good?
yeah.
So those are the changes. Were there any others that you had? I think that was it. Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Dave was.
Dave.
Oh, did Dave make it?
Yeah, I move that we approve resolution 24-11, a resolution adopting and approving the Morgan City Cross Connection Control Policy regarding cross connection control and black backflow prevention control of the Morgan City water distribution system, including the changes that were just recently discussed. I won't list them where Gary's so noted them.
May we add one more, David?
Yeah.
In part 2, at the very bottom, rather than the office in the water board system, or excuse me, water board water system binder, could we just say water superintendent's office?
Sure. I like that a lot better anyway.
Sounds more sophisticated, quite frankly.
Yeah.
If you wanna,
Heaven forbid we lose the binder.
maybe not.
Yeah, the latest is more. Does
So it's
it out
like-
better.
Yep, more direct.
Yeah.
So,
I will
thank
s-
you.
I will second.
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave with all of the changes, amendments, and we have a second from Tony. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, item C. And Cal, you're welcome to. I think he's learned by now. He can leave. And Clark, you're. Okay. For the duration. All right, thank you.
And have Lance's back, huh?
Okay, item C, which is now B. IPSA, no, I gotta get on the right thing here.
Yeah. Commercial.
Review the bid award, Commercial Street Trail Phase 1 project, resolution 2413. Ty, you can probably get us started and then Lance is gonna finish us.
Yeah, so this is our commercial street trail project that was bid out in 3 different schedules, so it's all part of one project. But Schedule A does some ADA compliance over by Riverside Park, so you can get on and off of the Mickelson Mile. Connects to the park, and Schedule B is the connector from Commercial Street to the fairgrounds. And then Schedule C is the water access that goes underneath the bridge. And so we've the low bid would like to award to Wilkinson and Son for $304,000. We put project C or Schedule C as a contingency on funding. So we got really good pricing. Better pricing than we anticipated. But if you remember, we applied for a grant to do the Schedule C separate. It goes underneath the bridge. And we think timing wise, we might be able to find out about that grant before construction happens. So if we don't get the grant, then we'd like to move forward and just get it done with the pricing that we have. If we do get the grant, then we'll hold off on Schedule C and do it as a separate project with the $200,000 that we've asked for, and include some parking and some other things like that. But that's why it reads Schedule A, B, and C contingent on funding. So that's our recommendation, and then I'll direct any specific questions to Lance. He has the drawings and whatnot about the project if you'd like to see or ask him anything specifically.
It's a cool picture.
Mhm.
That looks way fun.
Yeah, they're, Seth's his name, they're Jones and Associates Architectural, one of their architectural designers. It's magic. I don't know how he does it, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How far towards the bus garage is that gonna go, Ty, just to the end of the bridge or? A
So
little bit.
that one will
How far-
go,
Yeah, maybe if you show a map.
yeah,
Go down Denise, it'll basically end right at the city limit. And right at the end of the bus garage, and I've actually,
That helps.
I've actually
parking.
talked with the county and let them know about this. I don't know if you've been to the fair, I'm sure. It's
Yeah.
like
It's a problem.
yes, you can't get from the parking lot to the gate. And I talked to them, told them what we were doing and said maybe they'd be interested in talking with our contractor and maybe carrying this on from the gate over into the parking lot. And they said they would probably just do that. So
That's brilliant.
You can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
and then the ADA stuff at the park, it was actually at that concert in the park we did here last fall. I was sitting there and watched a lady try and get her stroller from the trail down to the pavilion. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, you can't get from the walking path to the park. Anyways, so that's where the skate park ramp and the pathway down to the splash pad kind of came from, just to get to where, where it'll be ADA compliant. That's kind of the reason it runs along, go back up. Kind of runs a long ways to get us under the 5% or whatever it is for your ADA slopes. And that's the skate park. And if you go up one more, that's it'll kind of run along the splash pad to get into up to the walking path. They just came out and did all the shots and then did their computer stuff, and that came up as the easiest way to get that. I mean, we didn't care where it got there. We just wanted to get there. So
I know there,
Way around the back through the parking lot.
I know there's a lot of people that are not a lot, but I talked to a few people that are pretty excited about being able to walk down to the end of Commercial Street now and then on an existing trail, walk over to the new bridge, which would take them over to the school or to the Wilkinson complex. So definitely a worthwhile project.
Yes, it will be, for sure.
it'll be nice. The street lights we're doing, we debated on lower profile, just pathway lights for the walking path along the end of that intersection, under the freeway. But that corner, it is just so dark over there. We just went with our regular standard street lights. So it'll provide light out on the street as well as lighting up the back in the walking path. It kind of serve two purposes there, because that corner is it's dark, it's pitch black at night. But I think this will be it'll be a good loop to have. I mean, it'll free up even parking from the Recplex for the fairgrounds, during the fair.
Yep.
That's a closer walk than some options. I think it's a good loop to have like this. I'm glad we had the room in front of the bus garage and we're able to get us squeezed in there.
I think it's brilliant. Wonderful.
This is just a sidewalk. We're not doing curb or gutter or anything along that road.
No, it's
It's-
actually.
Trail.
It's a-
I
it's a
guess I should have
paved-
used the
yeah,
word
it's a
trail,
paved
sorry.
Trail, yeah, it's just a paved asphalt
Perfect.
trail.
Oh,
So
it's-
same
okay.
as the Mickelson Mile is.
Perfect.
No, there won't
I should
be,
use trail, sorry.
Yeah, no curb and gutter. I mean, eventually there may be the need for it, but just the trail and,
Perfect.
yeah.
So it's asphalt, you say?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, okay, great. And it's 8 feet wide? Or is that just the one underneath?
I thought 10 feet.
10
feet wide asphalt,
right over here.
8 foot wide concrete access.
Oh, 8 foot on the one going under the bridge in the future.
I have a question for Lance, if I could.
Yeah.
While we're here, so it says that the project's for August. We have a grant deadline of May 18th.
I don't know where that came from, but that's part of why we want to push them to get this through tonight. I think he wants to get going on this ASAP.
So just a reminder, so we have a $78,000 grant for
Yeah.
Schedule B that expires May 18th. And so I was just reading, I didn't do the bid opening and stuff. I just want to make sure we hit that deadline, at least on Schedule B.
No, that is the plan. I mean, barring weather or something, but that is the plan.
We have to
We're gonna
start
get going on that.
by then,
We have to finish.
have to finish by then.
Or I can ask for a grant extension. I just have to know which way we're.
No,
We're
I think,
going-
I don't, yeah, and I'll call him tomorrow now that this is done, let him know it's been awarded and say,
Right.
okay, here's the date. Can we do this? I mean, barring some weather, we got a few this week's shot. We got a couple bad days next week, and then I think he'll be able to get right on it.
So I can, Schedule B is the hurry, but I can see extending till August for underneath the bridge, like that concrete pad. And if we end up going with C, then I think the deadline's fine.
Well, and I'm gonna get him on the trail first, and then we'll do the park stuff second.
Okay.
And then go,
Perfect.
kind of FYI, we may even see some changes to that under bridge stuff. I had a vision in the middle of the night. One of the big problems with that is gonna be a footing down potentially below water level and dewatering that, especially depending on the river level. I mean, it may be impossible to do, to pour that footing. Years and years ago, I worked for a company. We did a precast bridge in Fish Haven, Idaho, Fish Haven Canyon. We were raking out the gravel for the footings to sit on in 3 feet of water, and then the footings just sat in. We're able to sit on the gravel. It was all precast. Where Matt with Jones and Associates, I've got him looking into seeing if there's some kind of a precast wall that could be, or stacked concrete blocks that could be set in there. That would avoid having to dewater a trench. It would really open up a pretty good window on being able to even do the project. So we're kind of working on that, and so there may be some changes to that rather than a poured in place wall that may change and make it a little easier to do, and even maybe have some cost savings, hopefully. So I wish I'd have thought of that before we went to bid, but we were already, now this is only a week ago I dreamed this up. So anyways.
That might turn out to be a good vision.
See,
Mayor,
Tony,
so I'm prepared to make a motion. I must admit I was schooled on this before the meeting. So Denise, if I get this wrong, help me out, will you? So I'm not sure how to word it now, Denise. So I will make a motion that we adopt resolution 24-13, a resolution authorizing an agreement with J. Wilkinson and Sons for the Commercial Street Trail Phase 1 project, authorizing further negotiations and change orders necessary for the completion of the Commercial Street Trail Phase 1 project. Help me, Denise, with
Matt's suggestion was in the amount of $304,064.50, including Schedule C as optional work if funding is available.
and so the $147,094.50 to be expended at this time. Is that A and B? Does that sound right? with with Schedule C, the 156,970, depending on the funding, the grant funding. That's my motion. That's as good as it gets.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, let's see, so. Eric,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
Aye. Dave.
Dave,
Aye.
okay.
You didn't want to repeat the motion?
Do I need to repeat it?
No.
I was trying to add these two figures up. Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Thanks for your vision and your work. Lance, appreciate your efforts on this. I think that'll be a hot spot of the city myself.
You often have epiphanies in the middle of the night?
Yeah,
Okay.
you guys, sometimes I feel like you guys get a bargain on me with the amount of time I spend thinking about this stuff in the middle of the night. So, and if I,
Just moving forward.
and if I can, just real quick before you guys move on, I want to echo what Clark said earlier about the equipment and some of that stuff and having a good supportive council. Since I've started here, I'm fairly confident with our equipment upgrades. We're almost seeing a 50% faster times, snowplow cleanup during storms with, some equipment upgrades and stuff. We're significantly faster your average snowstorm. So I just want to echo that and appreciate having a supportive council. I let us do what we think we need to do. I had several cities tell me that if you've seen that new truck we got with that wing on the side of it, I had several cities tell me you can't use one of those in a subdivision. It won't work. You won't be able to do it. And it's been a very, very valuable thing this winter. So a lot of places probably would have shot you down and said, oh, you're not doing that. But anyways, I appreciate the support so we can do what we need to do. So.
Thank you.
Well, have the equipment is part of being efficient and good and prepared. Right, Jeff?
That is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Got the equipment, sure, most of your time.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna move to item
Thank you, Lance.
B, that's C. Amendment to the city manager's contract, resolution 24-12. There you go. Thanks, Clark.
Thanks, Clark.
Denise and I was talking about it, and we meet in the morning and have the whole crew over with you.
With me or Denise? It'd be better if they closed with Denise.
Would that be okay?
I won't be here tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay. When would?
I'm going to Manti tomorrow.
What day?
The day after is great.
Okay.
Till Thursday morning.
8?
That works.
I'm retired.
8 a.m. anymore.
There's one thing about retirement, you can't sleep in. Your body won't let you.
You don't have to have an alarm clock either.
Thursday, wonderful.
Thursday.
Wait a minute. Let me just double check. Something's coming into my head. Friday morning.
Friday?
That'll work.
Okay.
It is Friday. Perfect.
I'll put the cell phone.
Yeah. I think you said it that way.
Okay, Could I ask for a motion to go into a closed meeting? Is that what it's called? Closed session?
We have to state the reason why, right? For the purpose of, Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion that we go in a closed session for there's some term to discuss personnel issue. Thank you, Gary, for shortening that up for me. I know there's a reason. I can't. Will you put the correct verbiage in there for me? Thank you.
She'll ghost write for you.
Did you what?
She'll ghost write it for you.
Yeah, ghost write it for me.
we need a,
I'll second it. I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Hey, so Steve or Gary, maybe, are we able to do that if it's not part of the agenda?
Yes, at the bottom of your agenda,
Should say it, should
have a little,
Not on this one.
No, yep.
It's on the next page.
they vote to hold a closed session for any purpose.
Let's see, is your mic off, Gary?
Oh, I'm sorry. That, take every opportunity you can to turn it. I promise you.
Yeah.
It's it's probably a benefit. At the very bottom of the agenda, we provide for notice that it's hereby given, it's one of the bullets at the very end.
Uh-huh.
It's hereby given that by motion of the city council pursuant to 52-4 of the Utah Code, the city council may vote to hold a closed session for any of the purposes identified in that chapter. And so many times we do put it in as an item on the agenda. But there's no need to do that because it's always on the agenda. We just do that as a kind of an additional cautionary measure. So. Does
Well,
that help, Dave?
where it's closed, public doesn't have access to it anyway, so it's not shouldn't be a
Correct.
big concern whether it's posted or not. No,
Correct.
I don't always read the fine print, so thank you.
I always read the small print.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, first place he goes to.
That's right.
Start at the back of the
Let me go
book.
look at the little
That's
stuff at
the
the bottom.
bottom of the contract.
Gary? Because
This is one that you say.
Yeah, okay, where, Dave, do you want to participate? If so, then I've got to close this.
You know, I can't hear you there, Denise.
Everybody does it.
If you want to participate in the closed meeting, I'll have to close this Zoom meeting and open another one for you because this Zoom recording would be available.
You know, I would leave it in good hands. We've got a good representation there. I'd be happy to close out and go to bed.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank
Thanks,
you,
Dave.
guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Denise. Good luck. Listen, if you're still going by midnight, I'll call in for pizza.
We better not be.